avoiding by mix, and moreover, apart from pain, while doing sternotomy, while closure time, while doing sternotomy, there will be a lot of bleeding from the sternal bone site, bone marrow site. These are all the complications we are avoiding in thoracotomy incisions. And the healing time is also, if sometimes, most of the time it will heal well. If sometimes a diabetic patient, if the sternum is friable, if it is not healing well, it is a big headache for us. Once a patient ends up with mediastinitis, then the survival rate will be very much less. So that major thing is avoided in this mix, minimally invasive thoracotomy incisions. Apart from that, I told that cosmetically unappealing. Sometimes a keloid scar may form for some patient. Chronically, the patient will tell that that area is itching, and that area is becoming big. The scar is becoming big, like that they are telling. Those kind of complications will be cosmetically appealing in mix. Those complications will be avoided in mix. Next slide. Next slide, please. This image showing a keloid scar of the sternotomy. Then previously I have told level 4 levels of mix. First level is direct vision with sternotomy. We are doing 10 to 12 centimeter incision. And second level is 4 to 6 centimeter incision. What we are doing nowadays is that level 2 with the direct vision, with the help of minimal incision, 4 to 6 centimeter incision, we are doing surgery. The next level is with the thoracoscope, videoscope guided and robotic assisted surgeries. With that, we can reduce the incision by 50%. Next slide. Next slide, please. Next is next slide. Sternotomy, CAB done through left thoracotomy, mini thoracotomy, and mitral valve and surgery, and right thoracotomy, and aortic valve in upper minister. What are the approaches we are using for minimally invasive procedure? Right and left mini thoracotomy, upper mini sternotomy, lower mini sternotomy, and subsequent approach, and axillary mini thoracotomy. Next slide, please. Of the various incisions, upper mini sternotomy, lower mini sternotomy, and parasternal incision, and reverse Z-shaped incision. These are basically we are reducing the size of the incision. Next slide, please. Then coming to the individual procedures, what we are doing with minimally invasive surgery. First, mix ASD closure. This is either through right axillary thoracotomy or a right right anterior mini thoracotomy. This picture is showing right anterior mini thoracotomy incision. Next slide, please. This is showing axillary thoracotomy, axillary mini thoracotomy incision. Next slide, please. Most of the time for ASD closure, we have to, main thing is we have to access aorta and RA. If it is visible IVC and SVC, then most of the time with the 4 centimeter incision, we can achieve the ASD closure without much difficulty. Main thing is we have to cannulate the aorta and SVC IVC junction. If these three areas are visible through that 4 centimeter incision, then we will be able to do that ASD closure. Next slide, please. This is the ASD being closed with a PTFE patch. Mostly we are using a pericardial patch for ASD closure. Next slide, please. Then mix aortic valve replacement. It can be done either through upper mini sternotomy or anterior mini thoracotomy in second or third intercostal space, We are using routinely upper mini sternotomy. That exposure is whatever the areas we are requiring for cannulation and cardioplegia and aortic opening area, that will be visible through this upper mini sternotomy incision. This picture is showing the aorta being cannulated and RA being cannulated as two-stage cannula and went through the pulmonary vein. RSP vent being placed through the limited incision. All of the areas will be visible to us. Next slide, please. This is the incision on the aorta. Next slide, please. This is after opening the aorta, after excising the aortic valve, aortic newer valve, bioprosthetic valve is being placed. Next slide, please. Then minimally invasive MVR mitral valve. This is mostly through right anterior mini thoracotomy. The advantage in MVR is through anterior mini thoracotomy, the LA will be posterior, so we will be easily access seeing the mitral valve. In sternotomy incision, we after making incision in the LA, we have to make the use of the pulley retractor, and we have to turn the table position, and then we have to see the LA. If LA is large in size, then there will be no problem in seeing the mitral valve fully. If LA is small, there will be little difficulty in seeing the valve, but with the help of thoracotomy, we will be able to see the mitral valve easily through the thoracotomy incision, because the mitral valve will be in the posterior segment. Next, please. This picture showing the thoracotomy and transatrial approach, transeptal approach. After opening the mitral valve will be either accessed through opening the left atrium or through RA opening, and then opening the atrial septum, and then mitral valve can be accessed. Next slide, please. This is after opening the RA being held with the stay switches, and then opening the septum, mitral valve being seen. Next slide, please. Next, please. Then coming to minimally invasive CABG, this is through left anterior mini thoracotomy, about a 6 to 7 centimeter incision. With the help of that incision, we are able to harvest the mammary, internal mammary, and then we are able to see the LAD and diagonal easily. And with the help of newer instruments and hardwares, Octopus Nova, we are able to use graft. We are able to graft OM as well as PD also. Next slide, please. This is being this picture is showing the proximal anastomosis as well as distal anastomosis. Proximal being connected to the aorta, ascending aorta, and distal on the LAD. Next slide. This is a lima connected to LAD, and proximal vein graft to aorta to right coronary artery. Next slide, please. This picture is showing that Octopus Novo being held through the future ICD site, and another instrument in the subsequent approach to hold the heart. Next slide, please. Cases we can do address the minimally invasive incision. We can do ASDs, all types of ASDs, and VSDs with the RVOT obstruction. We can do transannular patch, and isolated PS also we can do. Then AV canal defects, then valve replacement, and CABG. Sometimes the pericardial effusion, we can do pericardial window through VATS also, and the thymectomy and thymic procedure also can be done with the thoracoscope, minimally invasive procedures. Next slide, please. These advantages of MIGS that I have already told: small and cosmetically appealing scar, and because of the minimal post-operative pain, yearly discharge from the ICU as well as from the ward, and pain will be less because of we are not cutting the bone and we are splitting the muscles. And moreover, the blood loss, obviously, the bone marrow bleeding from the sternum is avoided in mixed incision. So blood loss is less in the case of mix. And patient can be ambulated yearly and yearly discharged from the hospital. Next slide, please. Disadvantages is technically very demanding, and the hardwares are quite expensive. Not appropriate for every patient. Initially, to start with, we are using thin and moderately built patients. Next slide, please. Congenital ASDs and VASDs, we are using right anterior mini thoracotomy and right axillary thoracotomy. Right axillary thoracotomy up to 15 kgs, it holds good. After up to 15 to 25 kgs, right anterior mini thoracotomy we are using. And mini sternotomy, lower mini sternotomy for the top we are using. And adult cases, left anterior mini thoracotomy for CABG and right anterior mini thoracotomy for MBS, mitral valve replacement. Next slide. Next. Most of the cases on table distribution are within 4 hours after receiving an ICU, after seeing the drain and ABG status, hemodynamic status, we are estimating. Most of the child's ASD are directly estimated on table. And ASDs and VSDs, we are keeping in ICU for 1.5 days to 2 days, and then we are transferring to one. So overall, the blood transfusion rate and overall hospital stay is reduced in weeks. Next slide, please. And other complications peculiar to mix as in an open case and internal mammary artery injury while opening, while retracting excessively, control dislocation can happen. Next slide, please. Basically, with minimally with a fully open sternotomy, everything will be visible in front of our eyes, so we can easily see and palpate, and we can assess the heart as a whole. But in mix, you have to make sure of the hemostasis is perfect before coming up bypass, because once the heart is able to starts beating, we cannot see the operated areas in case of RUT patch. We cannot able to see the RUT patch completely. So basically, through minimal incision, we have to put more efforts to operate. Next slide, please. These are the few operative scars photos. Right anterior thoracotomy, phased closure. Next one. Next slide. Axillary thoracotomy and left anterior mini thoracotomy are same. Next slide. Overall, mix is safe and effective, and it reduces the overall patient hospital duration of the hospital stay and ICU stay of the patient, and it increases the patient comfort as in the way of pain. It reduces the postoperative pain. Moreover, all types of commonly we are doing a CABG valve replacement. Most oftenly, cardiac cases are valve replacement and CABG. Most of the cases are nowadays being done in minimally invasive manner. Next slide. Overall, it increases yearly recovery of the patient even after discharging from the hospital. The post-op rehabilitation is very quick in case of mix. Next slide, please. Next one. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your kind attention.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. Just few points. As sir said, I think we have already operated a minimally invasive CABG here in our hospital, and sir has done. And Incidentally, there were two CABGs referred by you. Both the patients were operated at the same time. Recovery of the minimally invasive surgery patient was like laparoscopy. So they went home just 2-3 days post-operatively, whereas open CABG, as the routine CABG, the time duration and the patient factor was a bigger thing. And I think patient selection is the major criteria, as you were telling, no, sir.
Yes, sir.
One thing is,
Initially,
for triple vessel disease, is it possible, sir? For
triple vessel disease, it is possible, sir, but I am not well versed in doing a triple vessel mix CABG. Single LED and diagonal, I'm able to do,
Okay.
and PDA and OM also we can do with the help of that Octopus Nuo, that instrument I have shown in the presentation.
Yes.
That we can do. Slowly we can improve.
Okay. Sir, any your counterpart?
So actually, the thing is, mix is mostly is surgeon's biased. So if you consider cosmetic or the quality of the surgery, mix will be always in the controversial side. Because if a well-versed surgeon was doing with a triple vessel disease or a single vessel disease, the quality should not be hampered in any ways. So what I feel is, considering mix as a single entity of for advancement in surgery or a hybrid, like doing a mix with a stent or something, it will be very fruitful. So I don't know, like what Punita Kumar said, like only experienced surgeons can do, but even in experienced hands, the quality will hamper in mix because he has to strain himself, bending his neck, as you said, like for 3 hours. Ultimately, the surgeon will get fed up. He will do whatever you like. I'm not saying it's open talk. So what I feel, compared to mix, open will be better, but you're comparing adding mix with some other procedure. So that will be helpful for the patient, because ultimately we are here to give a productive and a good quality life for a patient who comes for a heart disease. So it's not like bringing our talent to outside. And sorry if I've gone somewhere wrong from your side. See?
No, sir, no, sir. No,
Thank
no, I think.
Thank you, sir. It's a very fruitful discussion, because patient selection, as you said, we need to have a good referral system where we get the correct patient for doing such procedures. But definitely, as a patient attenders factor, they are all very happy after mix. The attenders response towards mix is more fruitful, and it's happy to see the patient walking home on the 3rd day, 4th day. It does make a difference. Thank you, sir. Thank you for in spite of your unwarranted schedule, you made it online, and thanks for the comments. So now I request Dr. Ashok. Dr. Ashok is our senior cardiologist. He's part of KAPV Medical College. And I'm actually, I would say, we are actually blessed to have you here. Since the inception of the hospital, you have been with us, and we should thank you for all the emergencies and all the surgeries. I mean, lives saved during. I think we have disturbed you the most, including all the other consultants. Thank you, sir. Thank you for accepting. I request you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Punit sir. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Hello. Hello. Laptop. Laptop. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. I welcome everybody for this World Heart Day this function. In short, I will tell about what is the current scenario in myocardial infarction. That this topic is not only for the cardiologist, for everybody else to know when to refer, when to treat, how to treat a case of MI. Next. This year concept, use your heart to connect with your heart. This World Heart Day 2021, which was celebrated all over the world in September 29th. Okay, next. Here in our India, the 33% of the Indians died due to heart attacks out of total deaths, of which our Tamil Nadu, Punjab, and Haryana, which leads the topmost in death due to heart attacks. So you have to know about what are the current scenario in our place also and how to proceed with that. Next. You know the short how the differences between what is acute coronary syndrome, whether it is a stable coronary artery disease, and then what is meant by CAD? It means the decreased blood flow to the heart muscles. Whether the decreased blood flow is due to any progression or any decreased blood flow due to any plaque rupture or any erosion of a thrombus occlusion, you can classify according to that. Stable coronary artery disease, you can say it is a due to the plaque progression. And ACS means acute coronary syndrome, which includes ST elevation MI, non-ST elevation MI, unstable angina of it. So if there's ST elevation MI means there's a complete occlusion of the blood coronary vessels. But in case of non-ST elevation, that is a non-occlusive, nearly it is a partial occlusion. This is a non-ST elevation MI. And if it is unstable angina means with any patient present severe coronary spasm also, and repeated chest pain which lasting more than 10 minutes. And if in patients with unstable angina or any patient with unstable angina, if the enzymes are elevated, we can say it is a non-ST elevation MI. The short categories regarding that. Next. How do you approach a patient with acute coronary syndrome? First, on admission in the emergency room, the patient presents with chest pain. Then we have to do a working diagnosis. Whether the chest pain, whether it's due to ST elevation or non-ST elevation MI. If there is a patient whose ECG doesn't show any typical changes, ST depression or non-specific changes, we have to do a troponin test, TROP-T or TROP-I. If it is elevated, it is a non-ST elevation MI. It is not elevated, it is a unstable angina. For a non-ST elevation MI, unstable angina, we don't need to lyse the patient, because if you lyse the patient, already the damaged surface of the coronary plaque will get ruptured and complete occlusion will occur. So we are converting a non-ST elevation into a complete ST elevation MI. So ideally, for non-ST elevation and unstable angina, we can heparinize the patient. And if the patient presents with ST elevation, but with elevation MI, ST elevation is a ECG diagnosis. So with that, you can diagnose the patient with ST elevation MI. And if you have a doubt, you have to do an enzymes also. Next. Then it's a small pathology regarding this. Why I have told is fibrinolysis is contraindicated in unstable angina non-ST elevation MI. Because it's a non-occlusive thrombus, by lysing it will disturb the plaque, converting into a occlusive thrombus. So ECG changes, what I previously told, that is a non-specific or ST depression in unstable angina and in non-ST elevation MI. A typical ST elevation is seen in a ST elevation MI. Treatment for all both unstable or non-ST elevation MI, STEMI, the loading dose
of antiplatelet statins and anticoagulants should be given. But fibrinolysis is only for ST elevation MI. Next. Next. Then clinical approach. History, clinical examination, echocardiography to find out the region without motion abnormality, cardiac enzymes. Next. Next slide. Usually the pain, usually the retrocranial chest pain. Usually pain may occurs anywhere between the neck and the abdomen in the front or in the either in the right side of the chest or left side of the chest or the back. It may also radiate to the jaw also. Some people will present as a pain in the jaw, and some patient have a pain, constricting pain in the neck also. The radiating pain may occurs associated with the symptomatic sympathetic symptoms like sweating, everything, giddiness may occur. And also some angina equivalents usually occurs in elderly female or diabetic patients. They won't present as a typical chest pain. They will present with a dyspnea or some previous some jaw pain or non-specific pains like that. And also nausea, vomiting only, and sometimes profuse sweating. This angina equivalents usually occurs in elderly female with diabetes mellitus. Next. A short thing in ECG changes. In ST elevation MI, there's the ST segment elevation. And the early changes, in others in non-ST elevation MI, the ST depression will be, ST flattening will be there. Next. Next. Here, the patient, usually the ST elevation more than 1 millivolt. Usually we can say it is a MI. But in case of anteroseptal MI, there is a certain things we have to note it. If a patient with less than 40 years and more than 40 years, we can keep. For less than 40 years in females, the elevation is more than 0.1 millivolt. That means more than 1.5 small squares elevation. We can say it is a MI, anteroseptal MI, V2 and V3. But in case of males, if it is in age more than 40, if it is more than 2 small squares, that means 0.2 millivolts. Under the age less than 40, it will be more than 2.5 small squares. In V2, V3, we can say it is an anteroseptal. This one thing we have to give. Everybody will have a doubt. If there is elevation in V2 and V3, how can we say it is a typical changes? Along with supported with the enzymes and regional motion abnormality, and with ECG things, we can able to find the elevation level. Then in V2 and V3, in males and females, there is a separate changes. It is in females, both above 40 or below 40, more than 0.1 millivolt, you can say it's MI. In males, if it is more than 40 years, it is 2 millivolts, 0.2. If it is less than 40 years, it is 0.25 millivolts. And contiguous ST elevation, we can say ST elevation in a contiguous leads only, we can say it is MI as per WHO criteria. That means contiguous leads, what are the contiguous leads means? That's a lead 2, lead 3 AVF, this is inferior wall. Lead 1 AVL, high lateral. And then V2, V3, anteroseptal, V2, V3, V4, anterior, and V5, V6, lateral wall. In this leads only if there is a ST elevation more than 0.1 millivolt, or these changes we say, we can say it is MI. When isolated, if some people say if it is a left main disease, you can say AVR elevation is there. So we can't light this patient. As per the WHO criteria for acute MI, the AVR elevation we should not lyse. So it is a location of the lesion is there, the distal left main disease like that. So we can hyperdose the patient, we can do an early coronary angiogram and intervention can be done. Next. So for example, ECG, ST elevation, V2, V3, before it's acute anterval MI. Next. Then what are the cardiac biomarkers? Normally, the cardiac biomarker, immediately the myoglobin will be the earliest biomarker to be raised. And next the troponins. Troponin I and T can be elevated, and CKMB will last up to 3 to 4 days, and troponins will last up to 1 to 2 weeks. And elevated troponin levels, we can identify it as a ST elevation MI and also non-ST elevation MI. In case of unstable angina, if it is elevated, you can say it is a non-ST elevation MI. ECG only confirms ST elevation MI. Next. An echocardiogram, we can see the regional wall motion abnormalities, and if any complications of MI, if any free wall rupture or papillary muscle rupture, everything we can see in the echocardiogram. Next. Then first medical contact. Well, if you see in the emergency ward, if any patient comes to acute MI, loading dose should be given. Loading dose consists of aspirin 300 milligram and clopidogrel 300 milligram and atorvastatin 80 milligram or rosuvastatin 40 milligram. This is a standard loading dose should be given if any patient comes in the ER with a ACS. ACS include ST elevation, non-ST elevation, MI and unstable angina. Next. And reperfusion is a cornerstone in STEMI management. What is the reperfusion? Reperfusion is instituted as early as possible. Early reperfusion will improve his life and is the most effective is the primary PCI. Because the time is muscle and muscle is life. How early the golden period we can lyse the patient or we can do a primary PCI, we will save the cardiac muscle. Next, what are the reperfusion things we can do? Next, the modes of reperfusion. One is thrombolysis. Next, primary percutaneous PCI intervention. Another is a pharmacoinvasive. These three things are the reperfusion therapy we can do. The thrombolytics. Normally, when thrombolytic therapy is given only when primary PCI which is not available at the present, because primary PCI means doing a coronary when a patient comes with a MI. After diagnosing within 90 minutes, we can shift the patient to the cath lab and we should cross the lesion within 90 minutes. We can say if we do an intervention, it is a primary PCI. Up to 2 hours after the initial symptoms, you can say it is a primary PCI. And if we are not able to shift the patient to the cath lab within 2 hours, due to any logistic lesion or preparation of the cath lab, anything means we can go forward a pharmacoinvasive therapy. That means we can within 10 minutes we should do an ECG to confirm the diagnosis, and within next 10 minutes we have to lyse the patient with a thrombolytics, either streptokinase or tenecteplase or retiplase. So after lysis, from 2 hours to 24 hours, we can shift the patient to the nearby cath lab and we can do a coronary intervention. So this is a pharmacoinvasive therapy. It was found that in this current scenario in COVID situation, we were not able to do a primary PCI if feasible and with all COVID test positive, with COVID positive patient with the proper precautions, we can able to do, we can do a primary PCI. And if it is not able to do within 90 minutes or within 120 minutes after this onset of symptoms, we can go for a pharmacoinvasive. That means we can lyse the patient with the thrombolytics, and then within 2 to 24 hours, you can shift to the nearby PCI center or PCI cath lab. You can do a coronary intervention. This is equally effective to primary PCI at this current scenario. Next. And these are the checklists before fibrin lysis. We should know about what are the contraindications for lysis. For any intracerebral hemorrhage, stroke of unknown origin at any time, it usually is an absolute contraindication. And then an ischemic stroke, ischemic stroke beyond 4.5 hours and less than 6 months. This is the absolute contraindication because we can for thrombolysis within 4.5 hours is an indication for any ischemic stroke. And then any intracranial neoplasms and any major trauma within 3 weeks, and GI bleeding for the past within 1 month, and any bleeding disorders with excluded menstruation, aortic dissection, and a non-compressible puncture, any procedure done within 24 hours, for example, liver biopsy, lumbar puncture, which are non-compressible, it is also an absolute contraindication. Menstrual bleeding and within 4.5 hours of ischemic stroke is not a contraindication for thrombolytic therapy. Next. What are the agents we are doing for thrombolysis? Commonly used agents here is tenecteplase and streptokinase. Streptokinase 15 lakhs units in 100 ml of normal strain over 1 hour. And then tenecteplase 0.5 milligram per kg a single dose injection. And then retiplase 2 bolus 10 units with 30 minutes apart. These are the thrombolytic agents we are commonly using. Next. And then in case of non-ST elevation MI and unstable angina, we can use unfractional heparin and then enoxaparin. These are the two adjuvant antithrombotic therapy we can use. Next. And after the thrombolysis, successful lysis, with we can assess with the ECG and clinical symptoms of the patient. If the ST segment is regress less than 50% of the initial elevation, or patient is clinically improved, chest pain decreased, and then the patient shock or everything is improving, it denotes clinically is the successful lysis. If the patient has persistent chest pain and ST elevation not recedes and the patient is deteriorating, it denotes the still it is a failed lysis, still the occlusion is there. Next. Then what is primary angioplasty means? Primary PC. Here it is recommended for all ST elevation MI. It restores angiographically 90% of patient, and the door to balloon time is 90 minutes. If it is up to 90 minutes or up to 120 minutes, it is known as primary. If it is more than that, it is not primary. We can lyse the patient from 2 to 24 hours. We can do a intervention. It is a pharmaco-invasive. Next. And usually after the therapy, I have to continue dual antiplatelet. You can give aspirin with clopidogrel, or aspirin with prasugrel, or aspirin with ticagrelor. Clopidogrel 75 milligrams, usually we are giving BD dose, and prasugrel 10 milligram OD, and ticagrelor 90 milligram BD. You can give aspirin with any one of this. But usually, in case of prasugrel, you have to little bit caution, because it should not be given a patient weight less than 60, or in a patient is more than 75 years, or the patient had a history of high chance of bleeding or ICH. It should be avoided in case of prasugrel. Next. Initially, thrombolysis within 30 minutes of first medical contact. Usually, any patient, the ideal time duration for diagnosing a case of MI, 10 minutes. The patient having chest pain to take the ECG is 10 minutes. And the next, within the 30 minutes, you have to another 20 minutes for the patient after diagnosing MI to thrombolysis. This duration should be less than 30 minutes. This can be thrombolysis can advisable in this current scenario if not the patient is not able to transfer to the cath lab within 120 minutes, or other investigations which is not able to feasible, or the cardiac catheterization lab preparations is not able to do within this 120 minutes, or due to logistic release of shifting the patient to the cath lab. In this type of patient, we can lyse the patient within 2 hours, and then from 2 to 24 hours, we can do a coronary angiogram and intervention can be done. Next. Then small advantages and disadvantages of fibrinolysis and pharmacoinvasive. The advantages of fibrinolysis is universally available. You can give lysis in the small village, nearby village, or any small hospitals nearby. And also sometimes during transport to the PCI center also, the lysis can be done. It is administered, it is quick and easy, and can be done in the ER, casualty, ICU. Lysis can be done. But the disadvantages means the reperfusion, that means the restore angiographically is only about 50 to 60% only. And Reocclusion rates, it's also after lysis, the patient of the second year, again the occlusion may occur. And also another is a bleeding risk. It is not feasible for any patient with any intracranial hemorrhage. For that type of patient, we have to do a primary PCI only. And regarding pharmacoinvasive, it is a complete revasculation can be done. It restores nearly 90 to 95%. And the reocclusion chances are very minimal. And the disadvantages means because it is required not only the doctor, it also is a team. It's a teamwork. And cardiac catheterization related things should be ready. These are the only disadvantages regarding that. Next. It's a short framework about MI. The patient was previously told for diagnosing within 10 minutes you have to diagnose, and then within next 20 minutes you can lyse the patient. If there is a PCI, that means primary PCI, if you are not able to shift to the cath lab nearby, and then within 2 to 24 hours we can lyse the patient. Either we can directly shift the patient to the cath lab, which within 2 hours we can do a primary PCI, provided all the investigations, everything can be done within this 2 hours work, and we can proceed with the primary PCI, and we can do an CH angiogram, and if there is any lesion, then we can dilate it and we can put a stent for that. Next. And these are what are the delay in STEMI reperfusion. One time when the patient, from the patient part of view, they are unaware of what the things happen to them. They may thought they are having some gastritic problem, and usually and then some logistic reason for them to transfer to the nearby hospital to take an ECG. This may have some delay in the patient point of view. So this type of thing, we have to educate the patient. For all patients with diabetes or hypertension, what are the features of MI, or what are the, how they present with any patient with any chest pain, whether it's a pricking type or a compressing type, with the radiates to the jaw, arm, back, with associated with sweating, giddiness, and also angina equivalence. If they get awareness, they immediately will come to the hospital. Within 10 minutes, you can do an ECG and we can diagnose that is MI. And if the PC center is nearby feasible, you can go direct to the primary PC. If it is not feasible, we can lyse the patient, and within 24 hours can do an angiogram, and complete reperfusion is achievable. Lysis only won't cost only 50 to 60% only the reperfusion rates will be there. In case of tenective place, it will be about 60 to 70%, 70 to 80%. In streptokinase, only less than 50%. Because as soon as the time is muscle left, as soon as how early you are coming and how early we are doing the procedure, the muscle is saved. Okay, next. This is a emergency department protocol, how to manage a case of ACS. Patient having, if any patient have present with ACS, first give the loading dose. There is no contraindication of loading dose. The patient have BP, low BP. Giving a loading dose, 300 milligram of aspirin, 300 milligram of clopidogrel, 80 milligram of atorvastatin, or 40 milligrams of rosuvastatin immediately, and we can take a ECG which shows if there is a ST depression, non-specific changes. We do a troponin. Troponins, if it is elevated, we can say it is a non-ST elevation. It is not elevated with the patient still have chest pain and ST depression. We can treat as an unstable angina, and we can treat with heparin or enoxaparin, and then we can proceed for a coronary angiogram. And another setup, the patient have ST elevation. Patient with ST elevation MI, the patient comes within 2 hours of duration, we can proceed for directly to the primary PCI. If it comes after 2 hours, we can lyse the patient, and then within 24 hours, we can shift the patient to the cath lab for doing a coronary angiogram, and if the lesion is found, we can stent it. Next. This is a common thing still previously last year we have done. In this now, in the current scenario, the patient will be facing so many patients with COVID positive, suspected COVID, and doubt because how this approach this type of patient in this current scenario. If the patient was found to be definitely COVID positive and symptoms presented, the consistent with the ECG shows a typical ST elevation MI, consider the previous thing list. You can do a primary PCA, but this can be done provided there's a if there is a dedicated COVID cath lab and with PPE protected things we have to do in caution only. This one thing can be done. And another thing, if the patient found to be COVID positive, and if can able to do all these investigations and with a rapid antigen test, anything found to be, if a patient with a suspected like patient, if you can able to do everything within 2 hours of duration, we can proceed for a primary PCA with the precautions, with the PPE kit, the precautions we can do. If at all, if not able to get all the investigations or some logistic problems, in this current COVID scenario, usually we are all of the hospitals and every institutions are following pharmacokinetic therapy only, because getting a COVID result and getting a preparation for the patient, and some patient also have a COVID myocarditis like that. So in that type of patient, or patient respiratory failure, it is difficult for them to lie in the cath lab for continuous for 1 hour. So in this type of patient, initially what we can do, we can plan for pharmacoinvasive. We can lyse the patient, stabilize it within 24 hours. We can go for an coronary angiogram, and we can send the patient. We can get a complete revascularization. This is the current scenario we can go into. Next. So what I have told is shown. It's a patient having a positive and probable. If there's a dedicated COVID lab, cath lab is present, we can proceed directly with that. And then another with the personal protective things, we have to proceed the case. Next. And previously, pharmacoinvasive therapy can usually practiced in where the cath lab facility is not available in the peripheral hospitals, and we can shift to the main hospital and do a pharmacokinetics. But here, in this COVID situation, there mostly we are going towards fibrolysis, and then within 24 hours, we are planning for pharmacokinetics therapy. This is the current thing. We have changed a little bit now. Next. Previous. This is a flow chart. This was provided by the cardiac CSI, the Cardiology Society of India, and they have found that the patient have ST elevation MI, definite COVID, probable, and then doubtful cases. If there is any definite COVID, the patient is hemodynamically stable, and with and we can plan for pharmacoinvasive. We can lyse the patient, and then we can go do a coronary angiogram, and then revasculation can be done. And in case of dedicated patient, we comes directly to the PCA center, the cath lab available. So we can do a rapid test, and we can assess the patient if the hemodynamic is stable, and we can directly go for pharmacoinvasive therapy. And if any patient with unstable angina, we can treat the patient, and we can plan for revasculation in elective date later. And one thing what they suggest, inter hospital transfer should be avoided, because if the patient gets infected, unnecessarily spreading of infection should be avoided. So the patient we can usually for lysis the patient, do pharmacoinvasive therapy, and then we can stabilize the patient like that. This is the current scenario was practiced now. Next. With all this thing, one take home message is now. Timely STEMI recommended, that means ST elevation MI is recommended therapy is timely primary PCA is the foremost is primary PCA only. Within 120 minutes, we have to revasculate the vessel, because muscle lost, the time lost, the muscle lost. So we have to recover that. And then whenever possible, drip and shift. Thrombolysis the patient and shift for pharmacokinetics therapy as soon as possible within 24 hours. Never ever stop with thrombolysis alone. Next. Timely deep perfusion will decrease the infarct size, and LV function will improve and will decrease the morbidity. Next. Because The time is muscle. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It was a very clear demonstration of how to go about things. And the floor is open for discussion.
Good evening to all. As Sir said, early reperfusion is the important step in management of microbial infection. For that, at any cost, we should not miss the microbial infection. So diarrhea and hiccup also a manifestation of microbial infection. So any patient, those who are having diabetes, hypertension, presenting with diarrhea and hiccup, in that situation also, we should not miss microbial infection. Better to take an ECG. Nothing wrong in taking ECG. Thank you.
Yes.
Very valid point, sir, because in our ER, we have come across a lot of patients coming to general surgery, even patient presenting to endoscopy, and we do an ECG, there will be a old change. And we are blessed to have physicians and cardiologists around, so we can diagnose it properly. Especially we surgeons are very reluctant on, and all these ECGs are very Roman to us. We don't understand all these things. So, as sir said, I think we should make a movement where the ECG cost should cover the registration cost. So that is, if that is there, people will not hesitate to take an ECG. So it's one of the best life-saving indicator. Any other questions, sir? Or any?
Sir, I have a small doubt, sir, regarding the cardiac management. If suppose I'm sitting in a small clinic and a patient comes with an excruciating chest pain, there is two scenarios in which the patient comes with pain. Prior, he went to the pharmacy and gets a treatment by himself and comes to the clinic. The next one, the patient comes with excruciating chest pain with hypotension. We don't have any facilities for ECG, and we have to make a referral. So time is of the essence. There is much importance is given to door to needle time as well as door to balloon time, which is not practiced efficiently. That is the main cause of mortality in our district. So what else can be done to prevent this kind of preventable death? And one more thing, what is the role of heparin in hypertensive patient? Heparin compared to low molecular weight heparin.
Actually, prevention is better than cure. First, you have to educate the patient. If any patient is present with chest pain, now many people are coming with chest pain in 20s, 30s also. They're present with myocardial infarction. But any patient with chest pain, immediately you have to consult a doctor and take an ECG, one thing. Then, if the second thing, any patient with chest pain, if you suspected any myocardial infarction, by clinically, by what are the symptoms I have told, angina and angina equivalence, there's nothing contraindication by giving loading dose, aspirin 300, clopidogrel 300, and atorvastatin 80 milligrams. Because such dose will what will cause, it will thin the blood, and if any occlusion occurs, it will decrease the occlusion, and sometimes recurrence also will occur in very few patients. One thing, so loading dose should be given immediately. One thing. Second, you have to look for other causes of this excruciating pain. Not only MI will cause like this. Some patient will present with any dissection. Younger patient, you have to tell patient with severe pain, excruciating, tearing like a pain, dissection also may occur. So, depending on what the things we have to assess. Any patient you are saying chest pain with hypotension. So, chest pain with hypotension, in this scenario, if there is a MI means, it's probably either it is an inferior wall MI or anterior wall MI, severe anterior wall MI, the patient will shock. In the type of shock, in this acute condition, it is a better thing giving a loading dose and refer to the patient to a hospital where fibrinolysis are available or primary PC available, whichever thing. Now, in every place, we have a cath lab, everything else, both in private and government setups, everything else. So better give a loading dose, and then we can immediately transfer. Giving a single dose of heparin at the time, it won't improve. giving a single dose of either heparin and enoxaparin. Heparin and enoxaparin we give a continuation for 5 days to in the case of non-ST elevation MI or unstable angina. In case of ST elevation MI, we have to revascularization should be done either thrombolysis with PCI or directly to PCI. This only will save the patient. Okay, with the patient severe hypotension or no need for giving nitrates. If you give nitrates, further it will worsen. If the patient is inferior wall MI, patient maybe if you take an ECG, you can find inferior wall MI. But if he had pain, means treatment is give first initially give IV fluids, because inferior MI give IV fluids, it will improve the blood pressure. Then lyse the patient. If the blood go to the left ventricle only, then only we have able to feel the blood pressure. With having a right ventricle MI means from right atrium, right ventricle, the right ventricle infarction is there. There's no blood will go to the pulmonary arteries and go to the left atrium and will come out to aorta. So if you give high fluid means sufficiently the blood will BP will increase, and the patient, if your BP is more than 100, we can lyse the patient. Lyse the patient either with tenecteplase, because tenecteplase lysis we can up to 70 to 80% reperfusion, full reperfusion may occur, but the streptokinase 50 to 60% only will occur. Whichever is available at that present, we can have to do that one thing. Giving a single dose of heparin or single dose of enoxaparin won't improve at that time immediately. And third thing, enough unfractional heparin to be given to all patients, but low molecular heparin should be avoided in a patient with renal failure or elderly patient more than 80 or 85 years. In this type of patient, the creatinine clearance will be very low. So it is advisable if you do knowing, if you're not, there's no time of knowing whether the creatinine is elevated or not. Obviously, give unfractional heparin 5,000 units IV 6 hourly, and after doing a urea creatinine and creatinine clearance, if it is normal, you can switch over to a low molecular weight heparin, giving subcutaneously twice daily. Or if the creatinine is elevated, if the creatinine clearance very less than 30, you can give unfractional heparin 6 hourly.
One more thing, unless otherwise proved, any chest pain or anginal equivalent, you should consider always as acute coronary syndrome. And if in case of remote places, always better to load with aspirin, propofol, and atorvastatin. So always time is muscle. So repeatedly we are telling time is muscle. As time passes, the muscle losses. Once we lost, it cannot be regained. And immediately refer, take one ECG. Even sometimes the ECG will be a presentation, ST elevation may appear later. So there may be some time lag. So don't wait. Any suspected coronary syndrome, take ECG. If it is normal, still we have to observe for at least 12 hours or refer to the nearby places. That will be better. In chest pain with hypotension, it can be antivalami with cardiogenic shock or inferior with the RVMA. So if it is just always inferior valami, see the ST elevation in 3 more than 2. If it is there, then there must be some RVMA. Then order for RV, right sided chest leads. So it will show the RVMA. So accordingly, you give fluids or give the things. So that will be better. And even up to 24 hours, we can thrombolyze if there is ongoing chest pain. So always thrombolysis or primary PC is the best form because the golden hour, that is 1 hour, within 1 hour of onset of pain, that is known as golden period. So in that golden period, even you can thrombolyze. It is almost more or less equivalent to the primary PC. After this, always the primary PC is the best one.
Good evening, sir. Thanks for updation, sir. I have one clarification. So suppose the patients வந்து chest pain ஓட local clinicல treat பண்ணிட்டு ECG எல்லாம் எடுக்காம just ஒரு tablets மட்டும், அது என்ன tabletனே தெரியாது. ஆனா வந்து நம்ம கிட்ட வரும்போது இத்தனை tablet எடுத்தாங்கன்னு சொல்லுவாங்க சார். ஆனா loading dose என்னன்னு தெரியாது. அந்த situationல return order-ம் இருக்காது. அந்த situationல can we give loading dose, double dose? நமக்கு தெரியாது it is loading dose-ன்ட்டு. நம்ம இது கொடுக்கலாமா அப்படி?
Usually for any patient with a suspect any chest MI means loading dose, usually they will tell aspirin 75 milligram tablet aspirin, whether they given 4 tablets, cloplet any 4 tablets, atorvastatin 80 milligrams. Now in this all doctors are well educated. Any patient chest pain, mandatorily they are giving loading dose. They are taught like this in this scenario. Any patient with the MI, they are giving loading dose right from the staff nurse to the CRRI to the medical practitioner. Everybody will know. If at all, some people will give single tablet or 2 tablets like that. If you have in doubt, you can give a full loading dose 300 atorvastatin. It won't harm. Giving loading dose immediately. If they already given, if they written in the notes, the loading dose, so much some tablets were given means no need. If you have in doubt, if they given any 2 tablets, 3 tablets means we can give a routine loading dose. You can give.
Repeat
That
ECG.
won't harm more than MI.
Okay. Repeat ECG எப்போ சார் எடுக்கலாம்?
Actually, if you do a first ECG, if you have any doubtful changes, wait for 15 minutes. Take serial ECG, 2 or 3 ECGs. If this shows dynamic changes, now all nearly 80-90% will show changes. Very few person, they won't show changes. There will be minor subtle changes will be there. So we should not say with the patient having any chest pain, with mild ECG changes, it is normal, you can go. You ask them to wait for another 30 minutes or 15 to 20 minutes, observe, take another ECG, compare with the previous ECG, any ongoing ST elevation or the ST depression or ST coving or deep T inversion, everything is there. And then the patient presenting with chest pain within 1 or 2 hours, do a troponin. Troponin is the earliest marker after myoglobin. So if you do CKMB, it won't come positive, it will come only after the 6 to 8 hours after that. If initially you can do a troponin. When you do a troponin, card test is really available. If it shows it, it will definitely show. If it is positive, means admit the patient with the subtle changes, treat as non-ST elevation MI. If it is ST elevation MI, anyway, if you do troponin, it will show positive only. So if you have in doubt, if a patient having any 1 or 2 tablets they are giving, give the full loading dose. Nothing will harm more than the MI.
Anterior wall
And then
MI.
you should keep in mind, not all patients having chest pain or abdomen pain or right hypochondrial pain as MI. Many patients we have seen as a patient in the pain, abdomen pain found to be cholecystitis in females or elderly men after 40-50 years. After that, second and third day, they found to be present with acute abdomen. So this also should be keep in mind, because the pain may occur in the lower abdomen in inferior wall MI in the patient in the right hypochondrium or patient present with the vomiting, like also it may present. But we should also keep in mind other causes, the obese lady, fat 50 after years, female with the obese patient, with the diabetes patient. We also keep in mind whether pancreatitis or cholecystitis also in mind, and should be caution regarding that. Early clinical examination and with available investigation, we can easily identify MI.
Anterior wall MI ko inferior wall MI ko after thrombolization ECG duration எப்படி sir?
Usually after diagnosis MI, usually primary PCI is ideal thing. After thrombolysis 90 minutes we should take one ECGs. Usually successful lysis, failed lysis and picture போட்டிருந்தேன். Patient symptoms decreased. There's hypotension, any comorbid will get improving. And ST elevation reducing less than 50% of the actual size. It is successful lysis. If not, patient is not improving, worsening, ongoing chest pain is there, ST elevation not at all changing out. It means failed lysis. That denotes the occlusion is still there, it is not opened. So with this patient, we can test a rescue PCI. Immediately shift to the cath lab and do an angio, and then we can revasculate it. This is known as any patient failed lysis. We can take this patient of failed lysis anytime to the cath lab as a rescue PCI.
Thank you, sir.
Any more questions? Thank you, sir. We are day by day learning, and that was our nursing superintendent who was asking the questions. So, sir's guidance has always helped a lot. As you said, patient selection and procedure selection is always important. And I have always been impressed by your clarity in thoughts. So I just wanted to convey that because not only to push for PCI, you always give the clear clarity that this patient will work PCI and this patient will not work for PCI. And you recommend to go for a delayed PCI. So, I mean, delayed intervention. So I hope that the message is reached by everyone. I request Dr. Kalamani to honor Dr. Ashok.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now I request Dr. Koti. Dr. Koti is our electrophysiology, is a cardiologist and an electrophysiologist. I think Dr. Koti is the only electrophysiologist available in the city as of now. And we have few visiting electrophysiologists, but he is residing in Trichy, and we are fortunate to have him joining us. So over to Dr. Koti.
Good evening to all. So it is my pleasure to be here on the auspicious day of World Heart Day. And I thank Dr. Rajavel sir and his team for arranging this meet. Because of this meeting only, I used to, I'm facing each and everyone in person. And it's very delightful to meet my teacher, Dr. Kalamani madam. Thank you, madam. So shall I start? So cardiac resynchronization therapy, CRT, it is known as CRT. So the word itself says resynchronization. Sync means any opposing walls, they are moving together means that is sync. So there is something they are not sync, that is they are desynchronizing. We are going to resynchronize it. So next slide. So in heart failure in 50% of heart failure, because the heart failure, the general prevalence is 1 to 2% in the general population. Whereas as the age advances, if you see in the age group above 70 years, we can see more than 10% of the patients are heart failure patients. So this is a big burden to our society. So the mortality of the heart failure also 5% per year, annual mortality rate. So in heart failure, whatever may be the cause, whether ischemic or non-ischemic, broadly heart failure are divided into ischemic and non-ischemic. So non-ischemic includes post-viral myocarditis, familial idiopathic cardiomyopathy, sarcoidosis, Chagas disease, HCM. All these are non-ischemic cardiomyopathy and ischemic cardiomyopathy. Because the treatment differs. In ischemic cardiomyopathy, always revascularization will improve the function. So in heart failure, 50% of heart failure patient will have some form of conduction disturbances. So we have two conduction systems, two bundles, the left and right bundle. The left bundle supplies the septum as well as the LV, whereas the right bundle mostly concentrated on the right ventricle. So in 50% of heart failure patients, we'll have the left bundle branch block. So what happens in left bundle branch block? Any pointer? 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 No, light, laser. Okay, no problem.
If you want, you can.
Okay, sir. No problem, sir. So what happens? The left ventricle is the main pumping of the heart because it's supplying the systemic high resistance, high pressure systemic circulation, whereas the right ventricle is to the low pressure, low resistance pulmonary circulation. So right ventricle dysfunction is not much importance, but left ventricle, because high pressure and high resistance, it will suffer a lot. So when you see the both opposing walls should come together, then only the pressure will build up. It will open up the aortic valve and there will be a good ejection. whenever there is a dyssynchrony, one is moving inside and other, because of build-up pressure, other will move away. So there is, when there is a delay, that is, they are not in sync, means there won't be any effective pumping. So in LBPV, because of the dyssynchrony between the septal and posterior wall, always the pumping will be decreased. Whenever there is a decrease in the pumping efficiency, which will cause more worsening dilatation of the LV, as well as this causes pulling of the papillary muscle support. That also will lead to secondary mitral regurgitation, and this will further worsen. It's a vicious cycle. So in LBB, if you resynchronize, the pumping will improve. Next slide. So this is electrical activation. The first one is the intrinsic conduction with LBPV. We can see the scale, color scale there. It shows 0 to 250 millisecond. Blue is a 250 millisecond and 0 is the earliest activation. In LBPV, we can see the right ventricle red color, it's activated yearly. Whereas the basal lateral valve mentioned in blue color, that is latest activation, it takes 250 millisecond. And septum in between 100 millisecond. So there is a delayed activation of the septum and lateral valve. So which causes decrease in the efficiency of the pumping. So in CRT, when we are putting the resynchronization, we are going to put two leads, one in the right ventricle, other in the left ventricle. So this is biventricular facing. We are making the difference between the lateral and septum very less. The difference is very less. There we are synchronizing. When we are synchronizing, the pumping will improve acutely. Chronically, this will have many remodeling effect. The LV size will decrease, the MR will decrease. Ultimately, the EF improves. So, next slide. So what is the rationale for cardiac resynchronization therapy? It confers benefits by coordinating RV and LV contraction. It's not only the interventricular, this is intraventricular and AV synchrony. Everything is important because suppose when there is no AV synchrony, the atrium will contract against the closed AV valves. So the atrial contribution to the LV will be very less. And in between the ventricles, two ventricles are interdependent because the septum is shared by both LV and RV. So it is a one closed cavity. The pericardium is a closed cavity, and within the pericardium, two ventricles are lying. The septum lies in between the ventricles. So whenever there happens any dilatation of the one chamber, because there is a compromised space, it cannot enlarge further. So it will push towards another chamber, it will compromise the other chamber size. So decreasing the preload, ultimately the LV will decrease, the EF will decrease. So prolonging the diastolic period improves the coronary filling as well as LV filling, and it establishes a AV synchrony. Next slide. So what are the current indications? So whenever any heart failure patient with reduced ejection fraction, EF less than 35%, and in ischemic cardiomyopathy, after 40 days of MI, because this 40 days is very important. So in the acute event, the myocardium still it is viable, but it will go into the stunning. The stunning will take time. So if any MI patients within 4 or 5 days, if the LV is very poor and there is a left bundle branch block, no need to go for the cardiac resynchronization therapy. We have to wait for at least 40 days of the MI, because either because of stunning, this will improve, then it becomes no need for CRT, because of stunning, if it improves after 40 days, the EF may improve to 50 also. Or when you are putting at the acute stage, there is chances for the LV pump failure related death. So always we have to wait for 40 days of guideline directed medical therapy. And for revascularization, whether PCI or bypass, we are always wait for 3 months. So any heart failure with reduced ejection fraction less than EF 35%, post MI after 40 days, and after revascularization after minimum 3 months. and there should be LBB pattern on the ECG, and the QRS should be more than 150 millisecond. It's a class 1 indication. And class 2 indication, if it is 130 to 150 with LBB, it is a class 2 indication. For non-LBB pattern, that is in non-specific interventricular conduction disturbance, RBB, it should be always 150. CRT is not indicated for heart failure with a narrow QRS unless in certain conditions like were in persistent or permanent AF with the rapid ventricular rates, unable to tolerate the AV conduction blocking medicines, and those who require the AV junction ablation. It's always, even irrespective of the QRS duration, we can go for CRT implantation. Next slide. So what are the evidence for CRT benefit? So it starts in 2001, the MUSTIC trial, which compared, it's a small trial only, it included EF less than 35% and QRS more than 150 millisecond. It shows always there is improvement with the CRT in addition to the guideline directed medical therapy. So other subsequently there are Miracle, Companion, CARE-HF, and Reverse and MERIT CRT and RAFT. All these studies, they compare different parameters like QRS duration. Another study took RBB with wide QRS. Some included narrow QRS. Everything showed, all studies proved that LBB pattern, wider the QRS, always better the benefit. Next slide. So this is the chronic effects of biv phasing. We can see the first one, LV volume and the LV pressure. The pressure volume loop, we can see with the LVV, it shifted to the right side. The efficiency is very low and it has to generate more pressure. After 6 months, everything improves. Next slide. So not all CRT, heart failure with LBB with wide QRS, not all patients will respond. There are certain things, 30% of the CRT candidates are non-responders. We have to selectively choose the patients. So wider the QRS, more the benefit. Female sex, more the benefit. If it is non-ischemic substrate, more benefit. If it is typical LBB, they are the candidates for CRT. Narrow QRS, inotropic dependence, and SCAR, they're not going to benefit from CRT. So sometimes lead position also matters because we are putting the LV lead on the epicardium rather than the endocardium. So epicardium means in between the myocardium and the lead, we'll have the vein wall, then the fat, epicardial fat. So this will have entrance to the stimulation of the heart. So vice location is most important. Non-apical is no use. It should be the basal lateral. And putting quadripolar leads will improve the EF because we have the option for multi-site pacing, not only the single site, we can pace multiple sites. And always seeing the QLB will have more than 90 or 95 will be good. So always we have to achieve the 100% biv phasing. So in all pacemakers, our goal is to reduce the phasing function. But in CRT, we need 100% biv phasing because we need synchronization. Whereas in regular pacemakers for implantation for any indication like a CHB, we need to reduce RV phasing because the phasing itself will have the LVB configuration and it will have the certain disadvantages like a reduced EF function, MR, all this will develop. So whereas in biv phasing, otherwise known as CRT, we need 100% biv phasing. Next slide. So implanting the LV lead, unlike the regular dual chamber pacemaker, going through the venous system, putting one in the RE and RV, it will be easy. Whereas for putting to the LV, we have to go through the venous system, we have to enter the coronary sinus. So the coronary anatomy is very important because there will be a lot of difficulties because of tortuosity, Wissens valve, all this will have this will pose a lot of problems by implanting. Next slide. So always we have first step in implanting the LV lead is we have to cannulate the CS. There are certain tools and which will help to easily cannulate the CS. And if like always better to do venogram, so we'll know better what is a target vein. So because the latest activation in LBB always basolateral. The basolateral at the region, the posterolateral vein lies. So always our selection should be the posterolateral vein. Sometimes the posterolateral veins may be inaccessible because of Weissen's wall or tortuosity, angulations. So in such cases, sometimes the middle cardiac vein, the first vein from the proximal part of the CS, the middle cardiac vein, a lot of communications will be between the veins. So from the middle cardiac vein, we can access the lateral part of the ventricle. So always we have to measure the electrical measurements. That is during the intrinsic conduction from the start of the QRS to the latest activation, that should be more than 95. So this is the place where we have to put the leads. Next slide. Next slide. So this is a schematic diagram showing the middle cardiac vein, the red color. The yellow one is a posterior cardiac vein and green one is a posterolateral vein. That the green one is our target. So 95% of the population, we are going to implant there only. In certain situations, we may be going through the middle cardiac vein, red color. It will have a communication to this lateral system, lateral veins. So we can access that part. Next slide. Next slide. So these are the various tools available for cannulating the CS. These are the delivery sheath. It comes with the different shape based according to the RA sizes. We have to choose. And different companies have different shapes. Next slide. So this is a coronary venogram showing the lateral. The target is okay, but it is little bit thin and it has some angulation at the origin. Next slide. So leads, unlike the other leads, RA and RV leads, we have different. One is straight lead is available. Others are canted. Canted means they are bends, either S shape or U shape. We can see different canted appearance of the LV leads. Next slide. Because unlike regular RA and RV leads, we have either tying leads or screw-in leads, whereas the veins are very thin. We cannot put the screw-in leads there, or we cannot push the tying leads. There is no trabeculae. So when it is canted, it will opposing walls. It will have some grip, so it won't come out. It won't dislodge. So this is what I said, the QLV. So the left VEGM is a electrical activity recorded from the posterolateral vein, and lead to the QRS onset is their Q. So from there to the EGM, we have to see if it is more than 90 minutes, it is a latest activation. So we are going to find out where is the latest activation. We are bringing it towards the start of the QRS. That is our aim. So latest is best for the bifacing. If it is less than 80, it's not going to improve because still the later part of the ventricle is somewhere else. We are not accessing that part. So always we have to check it. Next one. So this is a diagram showing QLV. So if it is more than 95 millisecond, it's better. Next slide. For the and another difficulty in putting the CRT is feeling the sheath, the delivery sheath. Always we have to be careful because if you miss it, sometimes the lead may come out. So this is the most vital important step in CRT. Next. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's a very different topic, and
I don't know, sir, because I don't know who is the audience, so I just put some slides.
But we should know all these things because it's a gray area which we omit, and sometimes even people don't refer to this.
Definitely, it's not only the CRT. Most of the indications are heart failure with reduced EF with LVP PETM. There are certain unusual situations where with narrow QRS, but EF less than 35%, who are in AF, recurring AV ablation, AV nodal ablation for the rate control, we can go for the CRT implantation. So we had one case here, such a different scenario. I have done the case, is doing well. I have seen many patients who are referred for the transplantation. Unlikely, he was referred for many times, 2-3 people I remember.
Cardiac transplant.
Cardiac transplant, sir. So we have done the CRT. Within 6 months, he is improved, he is doing well.
Yeah, that patient whom you're talking about is my close friend's father. And they are really happy about it. And he's in fact working in Amazon. So they came from Chennai for the procedure. Congrats. Yeah. Congrats, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Any doubts, sir? The floor is open for discussion. So if that's the case, only one thing, sir. Is there any patient selection whom you reject for, as you said, people you have been referred to cardiac transplant? So what would be your take on referring to cardiac transplant? Who will you reject?
When there is severe RV dysfunction, so they are poor candidates. When it is not an LVBB PETM, or when it is less than QRS duration, less than 130. So these are the situation. We'll go for the.
And of course, nowadays transplant is also picking up in a big way, and people are doing it in many cities. Even Trichy has 2 centers who are doing. So I think so complete coverage is available even in Trichy city. So that should be a good possibility. Thank you, sir. I request Dr. Chinnamariappan, a physician, to hand over the memento to Dr. Koti. Thank you, sir. Before winding up and going for the dinner, I just wanted to take this opportunity to introduce ourselves because we have been all working in a very busy schedule. So I will just push in some basic words so people get to know each other. So to start with, Dr. Ashok. Dr. Ashok is our cardiologist and interventional cardiologist. He's part of the KPV Medical College. He's a senior cardiologist available. And hope everyone has heard about his talk, and he's one of the most efficient and senior guiding physician available with us. Thank you, sir. To going by no order, Dr. Shanmugam. Dr. Shanmugam is our neurosurgeon, and he is now part of the government hospital as well as Neuro One. So happy to be associated. Dr. Rajkumar is our plastic surgeon. Sir is well known among us for a very long time through various phases. Now he is a plastic surgeon, and sir is also having his own clinic in Tilinagar. And is doing fantastic work silently. And recent cases have been showing your artistic experiences, especially that girl who presented with a large laceration. The whole family came to my home and thanked her. So that was, thank you, sir. Thank you for your presence. Dr. Soumya. Dr. Soumya is Dr. Rajkumar's wife. And Dr. Soumya is the only breast surgeon available in Trichy. So she has done her specialization in breast surgery from Tata Memorial as well as other fellowships. And Dr. Soumya is incidentally now joining us with the ASI. She is the current secretary of ASI also. Happy to have Madam with us. Dr. Prabhakaran. Dr. Prabhakaran is our anesthetist and intensivist. The COVID has brought in a very close association with Dr. Prabhakaran. Almost more hours spent by him in the hospital. So, and all the duty hours are covered. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your presence. Dr. Koti, of course, we have all listened, and Dr. Koti is the only electrophysiologist in the city as of now. So, welcome, sir. And sir is also traveling around. He's going to Tanjavur, he's going to Ariyalur. Every time I call him, he's in the city. So, all the best for your future, sir. Dr. Sendil is a pediatrician. Dr. Sendil is part of, again, a very silent, very efficient and effective person. He is also part of the government medical college. And thank you, sir. Thank you for all your. Dr. Chinnamariappan, I personally believe a physician always runs the hospital. So he's our only person who everyone calls. I think all specialists would have come across Dr. Chinnamariappan, and he's always happy to help us. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your presence. Dr. Raj Tilak, again, I should thank the COVID team headed by Dr. Raj Tilak. At one point of time, when everyone was stunned what to do, especially I think 2019 March, 20 March, when everyone was skeptical, and when we even as a hospital manager, I was very skeptical how to start COVID, what to do. He came up with a very brilliant idea, came up with few solutions of a simple WhatsApp group, a simple communication with all the staff nurses in role. I should thank you for all your efforts in COVID, and happy to say that our winning percentage is much higher than many. So let's continue that. Thank you, sir. Dr. Satyamurthy, our radiologist. As any radiologist is always behind the screen. No one has met Dr. Satyamurthy. He is a very silent and very efficient person. Goes about his job very easily and makes our life easier. So thank you, sir. He's a senior person taking the time out. Thank you very much, sir. Dr. Kalamani and Madam, it's a blessing to have you with us. Suddenly, the whole hospital is impressed by senior's presence, almost like a mother to us. Thank you, ma'am. She's a gynecologist and she's retired from Government Medical College, then went to SRM and now into teaching. She's one thing which impressed me is she's even now traveling to Kanchipuram Medical College for training the trainers. So she's an avid teacher, and if any one of us wants to learn something, it's from Madam. It's always with Madam. I hope I covered everyone with the family. This is Dr. Akila. She's my sister and she's a dermatologist and a cosmetologist. We are coming up with a new center also. So this is an opportunity to announce Beautiful You is a new theme for cosmetology. Because we all deal with emergencies and painful procedures, we thought cosmetology and cosmetic gynecology, cosmetic plastics and all, where people are happy to come to a hospital, we thought we'll bring up a small center nearby. So Madam is going to shift her main practice there and always available with us. And heading all the management per se, it is Dr. Tembavani. She's our medical superintendent, my wife, handling all the tantrums and managing the hospital. Thank you, Dr. Tembavani, for your presence. And before I forget, I'll like to introduce our doctors who are from the city who have joined. Dr. Yogesh, he's an orthopedician. He's from Mount Tabor Hospital. I think Mount Tabor Hospital, many of us would have heard, but I have personally seen. They do a wonderful job. at a very, very nominal price. And for that area, if someone asks Mathur, Mandayur, on the area, basically they go to Mount Abu and then decide what to do. So Andalog, it's a Christian institution by missionaries. Congrats, sir. Thank you. He's your brother, sir? Oh, welcome. Dr. Munian, he's from Pudugai Star Hospital, Pudukkottai, MD of the hospital. Thank you, sir. It's the first time I'm meeting you. Thank you for your visit. He's an anesthetist by profession. And also Dr. Radhakrishnan. Dr. Radhakrishnan actually has worked with us also. He has helped us during the COVID also, I guess, even prior to COVID. He's an anesthetist from Pudukkottai Medical College. And so Madam is a part of the airport medical officer, and she is the wife of Dr. Koti. So I've met her many times. Thank you, ma'am. Quickly I'll just introduce our team, because I think most of us would know, but personally wouldn't have seen. Phone la pesirpom nariya vaati night தூக்கத்துல எழுப்பிருப்பாங்க. So she is our nursing superintendent, Dr. Punitha. Dr. Punitha சொல்லலாம். நிறைய பேரை டார்ச்சர் பண்றாங்க. Mr. Ravindran is our administration head, and he takes care of the head of marketing also. So he takes care of the basic admin and marketing part. Vetri, I think கை உடைச்சாலும் வேலை செய்யறேன் அப்படின்னு சுத்தி இருக்கிறாள். Vetri is our marketing executive, marketing head now, and Siva has not joined. He was supposed to join. And the cardiac team, because it's a World Heart Day, Shivakumar, Siva Prabhu is a multi-talented fellow. He's a cath lab technician, he's a CT technician, and he is now managing the emergencies also. So he is now in charge of ER. So very multi-talented person. And for me, if I have any doubts regarding cardiac patients, I call him. So he's well versed in that, and he is also with us from the beginning. Leela is our procurement head. Leela has been with me since I thought of starting a clinic. So Leela and Rekha both are with me since I think 2017. So she's 15 17 hospital. So she takes care of finance as well. Vetri is our finance executive. He takes care of all the transactions. So any transaction related issue, and dietitian Nazima pati solno, because Nazima joined us as a dietitian. I was actually impressed by the way she developed herself into a nutritionist. She got training under Dr. Balamurugan. We did our first bariatric surgery, and she was trained by him for almost 3 months, 4 months. 1 year, right? Balamurugan sir, 6 months. So she personally got trained under him. They have a team, online, phone, Madhimati, they had some training. Now she is able to handle bariatric, post-bariatric nutrition, pre-bariatric workup. And we are also planning in the Ponnukapurna and the idea. Now we are planning something called as Safeguard. Safeguard I'll share in the group. Safeguard is a thing where number people who don't have parents kuda children illa, but children who are living abroad or in any other city, and the left alone parents kaga Safeguard, there is a concept. It is started in Chennai, Tirunelveli irukku, Madurai irukku. There are a group of doctors who are residing in Chennai, where they do online services for all these people. In fact, COVID treatment home quarantine they have monitored. So they have come up with a protocol for hospitals. So if we are part of Safeguard, they train dietitian or physiotherapist and they call them as health coach. So they have a protocol or almost or interview they have a protocol, and the protocol follow pani they send people to home. So idhula register பண்றவங்களோட வீட்டுக்கு every month they send people. They do all the tests there, like vision examination, fundus examination, ECG, and it is all monitored online, monitored by a doctor online, when the patient's attender is also online. So it is like when patient is being monitored by the doctor, attender online la irpan. So it is end-to-end healthcare. So adu vandu ipo it is coming up. So we have already enrolled. Velan has already enrolled, and it is to be launched. People are working for that. It is to be launched in the coming month. So adu and the idea vandade in the team ku apparama. And then we have a physiotherapist. He is taking care of ortho emergencies. He is taking care of nursing departments. Padi role. He is also a multifaceted person. Now recently he is upgraded into an NABH NCRT. Yeah? He is a trainer now for NABH. So he has passed that examination, and now he will become a NABH trainer. So and யார் இருக்கா இல்ல உங்க கார்டியக் டீம் வாங்க. அஜீஸ் அப்புறம் ஸ்வேதா. Shweta is the echo technician and Ajeez is the cardiac cath lab technician. Then Ayanar kadasi da Mohan again is taking care of maintenance. He's taking care of housekeeping, and he's also a very multi-talented person. And finally Ayanar again ipo நம்ம பண்ண இந்த Zoom meet இந்த இதெல்லாம் it was done in 2 hours time. So Punit Kumar sir varala அப்படின்றது. He is capable of handling everything. So all நம்ம IT related activities எல்லாமே is done by Ayanar. So and madam and madam is actually our NABH coordinator, quality control in charge irukanga appa. She joined us as a nursing superintendent. Now she is now taking care of quality control. Now we are in the phase of NABH renewal. We have already got NABH, primary NABH, and now in the phase of renewal, and that's happening now. 6th we are having the final inspection, and hopefully my belief is, because I was always part of PSG hospitals, Coimbatore, and PSG hospital was proudly the first NABH recognized medical college in India. That was a great recognition to have, and that happened almost 12 years back. So 14 years back. So that was when NABH came to India. Quality standards in Radhavadu. So I have told them their target is to get full NABH within 2 years. So that's the target which they are working, and I'm proud to say that we have never paid a consultant even 1 rupee. It is purely because of these teams' work. They have self-trained themselves, got online, and we give targets. Screw it, but they have done well. So thank you everyone, and let's have dinner. Yes.